This is the story of a high school teen who disappeared after finishing her shift at a small-town video store. Her car was later discovered with her belongings. A tire was slashed and there was no sign of Kelly, with no leads to this day after more than 30 years of searching. What happened, you may ask? Stay tuned to find out. Welcome to our channel. This is Criminal Activities. Kelly Dae Wilson was born May 18, 1974, to her parents Robert Dae Wilson and Kathy Carlson. Kelly was 17 years old at the time of her disappearance. She was born and raised in the small town of Gilmer, Texas, a place she had been living her whole life, and this little town seemed to be a comfortable, safe place for her. The night she mysteriously disappeared was January 5, 1992. This night shook the small northeast Texas town to its core. A local resident, Lori Stanley, living in Gilmer, said, "There was so many rumors and there were so many non-answers that we were scared to death to go anywhere because we didn't know who to trust and who we couldn't trust as a teenager growing up in this town." Kelly seemed to vanish into thin air, and to this day, no one knows where she is at. Kelly was a teen who was well on her way to starting her future. She was in her last year of high school at Gilmer High School, and her friends and classmates were looking forward to their summer graduation. Not only was she a senior, but she also had the responsibility of working a job when she wasn't in school. She worked at a video store downtown called Northeast Texas Video. On the night she mysteriously disappeared, Kelly drove her 1985 Dodge Charger to her job for her usual shift. Nothing seemed out of the ordinary that night, according to her boss. Kelly's boss and the owner of the store was Joe David Henry. He frequently worked with Kelly, and that night was no different. Kelly's shift ended, and it was time to close the store for the night. Sometime after 8 p.m., Joe and Kelly parted ways after locking up. They walked out to their vehicles, Joe to his truck and Kelly to her car. Joe was the last person to see Kelly before she disappeared. Kelly began to drive about half a block around the corner to a local bank. Joe mentioned how he had sent Kelly to the bank to deposit the store's daily cash. While Kelly took care of this task, Joe left to drive home for the night. Kelly, however, never made it home that evening. Surveillance footage from the bank showed Kelly's car pulling up to the machine to make the nightly deposit, but investigators were unable to confirm if it was Kelly inside the car or someone else. Kelly's parents waited up for her that night, knowing this was unusual behavior for Kelly. But as the hours ticked by, it became the next morning of January 6th. Her parents began to panic, wondering where Kelly could be. Kelly's mother, Kathy, began to call around to Kelly's friends and some family members, but no one had seen or heard from her. She also called Joe from the video store to ask him if he knew anything about where Kelly might be. During the phone call, Kathy asked if her daughter mentioned anything about any plans she may have had after work that night. But Joe said that as far as he knew, Kelly was intending to head home after her bank stop. Time continued to drag on, and morning turned into afternoon. This is when Kelly's stepfather drove to the Northeast Texas video store to ask Joe directly for any signs of clues to where his stepdaughter might be. He pulled into the parking lot and immediately his heart sank. He saw Kelly's car parked out behind the video store and noticed that one of her tires had been slashed. Her tire was completely falling off the wheel, as if Kelly had been driving on the flat. Kelly's purse was found inside her vehicle along with some of her other personal items, but the one thing missing was her car keys. There seemed to be no signs of a struggle. Joe confirmed that Kelly didn't ever show up for her shift that afternoon, but it is unknown whether he noticed Kelly's car in the parking lot. Sergeant James York Brown of the Gilmer Police Department said, "It is possible the missing teen drove back to the video store to find assistance with changing the tire or to try to get a ride home before she disappeared, but no one really knows for sure." Shortly after Kelly's car was found, the Gilmer Police Department became very involved in finding her, and this was labeled as a missing person case. Joe was questioned extensively about Kelly since he was the last person to see her alive. When it came to Kelly's case, he was ruled out fairly quickly. The second person of interest was a 17-year-old named Michael Bybee. He was a student at the same school Kelly attended, Gilmer High School. During questioning, he admitted to being the one who slashed Kelly's car tire. He was convicted of a misdemeanor for this, but he claimed he did not know where Kelly was, and insisted that her disappearance happening the same night was a mere coincidence. Even though the timing for it all is very odd, the Gilmer police were able to rule Michael out as a suspect. The next person of interest was another young man named Chris Denton. Chris was the boyfriend of Kelly at the time. According to those who knew about the two's relationship, Chris had a hot temper. The two also supposedly had been arguing prior to Kelly's disappearance. Weeks had passed and there were still no answers on Kelly, but apparently Chris decided to sell his car to a buyer from Mexico. Police saw this as strange and managed to get their hands on his car after some time. They did some searching around inside the vehicle and found strands of blonde hair the same color as Kelly's. But while investigating Chris, the name Brent Ward got brought up, and deputies thought this man was suspicious. Brent Ward was a cousin and friend of Chris Denton. When police questioned Brent, he oddly lied of his whereabouts the night Kelly went missing. He told the grand jury that he had been working at Holly Lake Ranch on the day Kelly disappeared. He allegedly even asked a coworker of his to lie for him as well. Timesheets showed that he did not work that day. There wasn't any solid evidence connecting Brent to Kelly's disappearance, however, so police couldn't pin anything on him. In the year of 2004, Chris passed away due to cancer. It was rumored that in his final days, he confessed to knowing what happened to Kelly, but this was discovered to be a malicious lie that was spread by others, and as far as we know, Chris maintained his innocence until the end. The final suspect in Kelly's case shocked everyone. Sergeant James York Brown of the Gilmer Police Department had initially led Kelly's investigation, but in 1994, 2 years after Kelly disappeared, James, along with 7 others, were indicted by a grand jury for possible involvement in Kelly's disappearance. The prosecution alleged that James, along with his co-conspirators, had kidnapped Kelly and held her prisoner for about a week before disposing of her body. The state also proposed that they sexually assaulted and tortured her while she was held captive, then ended her life by stabbing her to death. It was also alleged that the group was involved with a satanic cult and had engaged in violent acts. Many of the individuals indicted were not only held for Kelly's disappearance, but were being charged with sexual abuse towards children. However, the satanic cult was determined to be non-existent, a fantasy concocted by overzealous investigators. Following months of investigative research and court trials, the charges were dropped against James and the 7 others. Since then, there sadly has been little movement in this case, and this group has maintained their innocence. Please keep in mind that these missing people cases we cover are for real people. It will be going on over 30 years now since Kelly disappeared, and her loved ones and supporters don't want her case to be forgotten. The time her family has spent without her over the years hasn't gotten any easier for them. A short description we have of her is that she had naturally light brown hair but had colored it blonde prior to her disappearance. She also had blue eyes. Her last known weight was 120 pounds and she was 5 feet 7 inches tall. She was last seen wearing stone-washed blue jean knee-length cutoffs with strings, a dark boys type rugby shirt and suede loafers. She was also last seen wearing lots of jewelry that included a gold dome ring, a gold emerald ring, a gold diamond inset Mexican eagle coin ring, a gold pinky ring, a gold chain bracelet, a gold watch, and triangle earrings. She also had a retainer on her lower teeth. The people of Gilmer still gather on occasions for candlelit vigils in Kelly's memory. A friend of Kelly's, Michelle Davis, said, "The 30-year mark has really hit home and hit hard for a lot of us in the community, and we've decided to pull together and pool all of our resources and see if we can get some answers." Jennifer Dean was another attendant of a vigil for Kelly. She mentioned how she was the same age as Kelly, and they would have graduated together in the class of 1992. She said they were close friends and had been hanging out a lot prior to her disappearance. Jennifer had positive things to say about Kelly. She mentioned how she was fun, she was friendly, she was beautiful, she was smart, she was not afraid, she was brave. The community is trying to stay hopeful that information will eventually surface as to what happened to Kelly. Jennifer mentioned how they have been dealt so much misinformation with the case throughout the years, and hopes they can eventually get some answers. She said, and I quote, "It's been crazy. If anybody has followed the case, they've seen it move towards one group of suspects, and then nothing panned out, another group of suspects, and then nothing panned out. She continued by saying, "Then it's like things just fizzled out and there's been nothing. I don't feel like we know any more than the day she went missing. Really a little bit. I do feel hopeful though. I feel new things are coming out." Regarding the continuing search for Kelly, National Center for Missing and Exploited Children has generated an age-progressed photo of what Kelly may currently look like. If you know anything about Kelly Rae Wilson's disappearance, contact the Gilmer Police Department or the Upshur County Sheriff's Department. The phone numbers will be down in the description box. Kelly's disappearance certainly remains a mystery, but I want to know your opinion on this case. What do you believe happened to Kelly? Do you think one of the suspects mentioned had something to do with it and was mistakenly overlooked? I'd love to hear from you in the comments section. This is Criminal Activities signing off. Stay safe out there.